Wildlife photography. It can be both challenging, sometimes frustrating, but at the same time it can also be rewarding and satisfying. But how do you take ordinary wildlife photos and turn them into extraordinary photos? Find out next. Hi guys, and welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about some tips and secrets I like to use when it comes to wildlife photography. Let's rip into it. Get to know the wildlife you're photographing, including their habits, breeding cycle, mannerisms, feeding times of the day, and style in which they feed. You can then choose the times when to do your photography accordingly. This may also include seasons. It's no good trying to photograph particular wildlife in December when they may not be in the area until March. Also, maybe consider using things like trail cameras to make sure the wildlife you're chasing is in the area, or using a specific nest or hide during the day or night. Oh, and these trail cameras do come in handy when you have strange visitors in your roof at night, like what happened to me recently. So I put this camera up there. I want to see what was going on. Oh, rats. Yep, I captured this guy making himself at home. Time to capture him humanely and locate him to another area, I think. Study the environment you're going to and get to know the habitat you're in. Because when it comes to wildlife photography, there are things that like to eat you. So it is best to stay at a safe distance and use a good telephoto lens. Sometimes it's more safe and advantageous to use a telephoto zoom lens like this Nikon Z 180 to 600mm I have. There are more expensive lenses you can use on the market, but I use this one for its relatively cheap price and good image quality. Knowing your gear and its limitations is so important. Using the right or wrong settings can either make or break your wildlife photography. For example, there's a huge difference in camera settings from, say, a bird sitting sedately on a branch to a cheetah sprinting through the African wilderness. You have to get to know different ISOs, shutter speeds, and apertures. A simple example is you use a low shutter speed for a bird sitting sedately on a branch as compared to a high shutter speed for a bird in flight. Just like landscape photography, where lighting is a very important element, so too with wildlife photography. This is perhaps one of the most important elements in getting great wildlife photos, when you can take ordinary shots and turn them into extraordinary shots. Here's an example I took of a small water dragon sitting on a rock during sunrise. The single sunbeam filtered through the trees and fell just on the part of the rock where the lizard was. For extra dramatic effect, I changed the image to black and white using a very strong contrast. Trust me when I say, when you're patient, more times than not, it'll yield you great wildlife photos. As much as we'd love nature to run on time like a train schedule, it has its own timing on when things happen. The best and perhaps the only thing you can do is be in the right position with your camera, charged up and ready to fire. Then it's a waiting game until your subject comes along. Going for the minimalist angle can give you some very powerful wildlife images. Things like light or dark animals on contrasting dark or light backgrounds. From being small in the frame to show the scale involved in the image, minimalism really does give your wildlife photography that extra edge when it comes to creativity and telling a story. Okay, so that's some of the tips and secrets I like to use when it comes to wildlife photography. Let's get out of the studio here, let's go out in the field, and I'll show you how I put them into practice. So we've come out of the studio. I'm going to put some of these tips that I've been telling you about into practice. Now, a lot of you that have been watching my channel recently, about a few weeks ago, I put up a video of a little Australian willy wagtail's nest that I found, and I was using this gear. I kept my eyes on this nest because my whole idea was I wanted to get these tiny little baby willy wagtails when they hatched. Another great thing would have been able to get the mother feeding them. So I came down every day checking this nest to see if I could see these little babies. This morning I was here, today is day one, they have just hatched. So I've got my gear, I've come back, and it's time to go and capture these guys. Now you'll notice I've got my gear here. This is the Nikon Z7 with the Nikon 180 to 600mm lens. I've got it sitting on a monopod. Now that was part of the planning because I knew that when I'm going to be focused on this nest, I'm going to have to be holding this camera up for quite a long time. Ooh, mosquitoes here are pretty bad, and that's another tip that I'm going to share with you in just a minute. This monopod is going to save my arms. Because it's quite a tall monopod, I can get up to my eye length. I'm about 6'2". If you haven't seen the video on this monopod, what I'll do is I'll leave it at the end of this video and you can check it out a little bit later on. Anyway, let's get this gear, let's go up the trail here and we'll try and capture these little baby woolly wagtails. Okay, so this woolly wagtail's nest, this is about the highest point I can get right here. I'm going to bring this monopod up to my eye level. That's the great thing about this monopod too, is that down at the base I can angle it and it doesn't really affect the tripod feet. There is one little tiny thing that I'm kind of like a little bit disappointed about. There's this stick just where the adult comes in to feed, but that's life. You've just got to do the very best you can. So I've got the Z7 on high plus, I'm focused on the nest. Got my settings, I'm just waiting on that adult woolly wagtail to come in and give a bit of a feed. So you'll see what I mean about the light that's hitting my face. It's also hitting just upon the nest. Pre-frame shot, I'm just going to go single point autofocus. I'm going to try some stills to begin with. I'm sitting about f7.1 and I'm at 1/800th of a second. Now it's pretty low light even though the sun's coming down through the trees. I have actually made a video on how to deal with noise when you're using this type of gear, and I'll leave it at the end of this video. So I'm just watching these woolly wagtails. They're flittering about, they're capturing like insects. They're coming back and they're feeding the young. I'm between these two trees, looking right between this gap. So that's the great thing about this monopod. It's taking the stress off my arms. I can just sit here now and I'm just using my peripheral vision to look to see the woolly wagtails are still flittering about. As soon as I see, oh, she's just come in. That was a really lovely feeding sequence and I had the backlight, so that was perfect. So, you know, some of the planning has really come together here. Now you'll notice I'm wearing loose, light clothing. I noticed there was a heap of mosquitoes. Now mosquitoes love dark colors. They're covered all over my lens and camera at the moment, but they're not coming near me. One, I've got insect repellent. Two, I've got loose, light clothing on. Another little tip for you guys. Now what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to get some slow-mo video. So I'm just going to flick it over. And I'm just going to pre-frame on that nest again. Again, I'm just going to sit here waiting patiently. And I'm just looking. Sorry, I'm just watching this woolly wagtail. It's just flittering between the trees here. As soon as I see it get something in its beak, I'm just going to go and record now because it looks like they're going to get something. Here it goes. Oh, that's great. The nest is backlit. Oh, that is so beautiful. Well, all that planning worked. It's spot on 4:30. The light has just come through those trees now. It's just hitting on the back of the nest. What a magical scene to get that. You know, there was a section of that video there where one of the little woolly wagtails stuck its head up and I had this track of music in mind. But unfortunately, I can't use that track of music here on YouTube because it's copyrighted. I can, however, use it on Instagram. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut up this little clip of 10 seconds. I'm going to put this music to Instagram. Go and check it out and you tell me if it suits. Oh, they're feeding. Oh, wow. Remember, practice makes perfect. I don't expect people to watch this video, then charge out and become experts overnight. You have to practice as many times as you can and hone your skills to a level you're happy with. Well, there you go, guys. That is some of the secrets that I like to use when I'm going for great wildlife photos. And I hope you found this video helpful. You know, there is one last little thing that I'd like to share with you, and that is, don't forget to have fun. I think a lot of photographers are so fixated on their gear and settings, they forget to take in the beautiful surroundings. Sometimes it's worth putting away the camera, just taking in a deep breath and just enjoying everything that you're seeing. Never stop creating, and I'll see you next time.